Hi, I'm Lucas. I'm the TOEFL expert at magoosh.com, and in this video, you're going to do some speaking practice, just like on the real TOEFL. We will do a full speaking section. This is a 20-minute experience. But first, before I give you those questions, let me introduce you to the speaking section so you know what to expect. There will be 6 questions. The first 2 will just be questions. That is, there will be a question and you give an answer. But then the next 4, that is questions 3, 4, 5, and 6, will all have some media involved, some listening. In questions 3 and 4, you're going to read a text and then listen to a conversation or lecture, and in your answer, in your spoken response, summarize. And in questions 5 and 6, you're going to listen to a conversation or a lecture with no reading, and again, summarize and explain. On the TOEFL speaking section, you're going to have very strict timing. You will only have 45 seconds or 60 seconds to give an answer, depending on which question it is. We're going to do that with a timer in the video. Do not spend more time than you're allowed. When the time is finished, you are finished. Okay, so let's get started with the first question, and after, I'll talk a little bit about how to structure your answers. You will now be asked a question about a familiar topic. After you read the question, you will have 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to speak. Identify a day or moment in your life that was embarrassing to you and explain why it was embarrassing. Be sure to include specific examples in your response. You will now be asked to give your opinion about a familiar topic. After you hear the question, you will have 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to speak. Many people prefer watching music videos on television or the internet rather than listening to the songs on their own. Which way of experiencing music do you think is preferable, and why? You will now read a short passage and then listen to a conversation on the same topic. You will then be asked a question about them. After you read the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. The university will be making changes to one of its campus dining areas. You will have 45 seconds to read the university's announcement about the changes. Begin reading now.
Now, listen to two students discussing the announcement.
Did you hear about the new food court on South Campus?
Yeah, man, it's too bad they're getting rid of the cafeteria.
What? Why? Won't it be good to have a few more options?
I don't know. I don't feel like this really gives us more choices. The cafeteria already had dishes from other countries. They had vegetarian options and customizable sandwiches, too. It's not like the quality of this new food court's ingredients is going to be much better than what we had. I'll bet it's all from the same source, even.
You think? I mean, yeah, if they don't even change their supplier, the offerings probably won't be all that different.
Exactly. Just pricier.
Wait, why is that?
The cafeteria was all you can eat. You'd get as much food as you wanted for a flat price. But at a food court, you've got to order individual meals. That ends up costing more.
You've always liked to load up a big plate, huh?
You've got that right. If I have to buy 4 meals every day, it's going to be hard on my wallet.
The man expresses his opinion about the change described in the article. Briefly summarize the change. Then, state his opinion about the change and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. You will now read a short passage and then listen to a talk on the same academic topic. You will then be asked a question about them. After you hear the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. Now, read a passage from an art history textbook. You will have 45 seconds to read the passage. Begin reading now. Now listen to part of a lecture in a class focusing on the history of modern art.
Now, scholars sometimes like to say that in the 20th century, art based on Greco-Roman ideals of beauty and physical perfection fell totally out of favor thanks to the work of pioneering critics like Roger Fry. But today, I'm going to argue that this is actually an oversimplification. Now, paintings in the 20th century certainly became more abstract than at any other time in history. But in some ways, this had nothing to do with the work of professional critics, like Roger Fry. I mean, I think it can be convincingly argued that the change in style was simply due to the invention of the camera. See, it was no longer necessary to turn to professional portrait painters to have one's picture taken. And for this reason, there was a gradual decrease in the number of students who went to painting school. It was simply no longer important to spend years mastering technical painting. And instead, it became possible to produce highly abstract works meant to express, well, ideas. However, many of these ideas still had to do with the age-old Greco-Roman ideals. For example, Manet's painting, Luncheon on the Grass, which is sometimes called the first modern painting, it actually used images originally copied from an ancient Roman coffin. Pablo Picasso, a great abstract artist, also created several paintings reacting to Greek mythology. And, to this day, advertisers and filmmakers often turn to Greco-Roman notions of beauty in order to entice audiences. In fact, many modern artists have reacted to too much abstraction in modern art and are returning to classical Greek and Roman themes in their work. So, the Greco-Roman tradition in art is far from dead.
Using the points and examples in the lecture, explain how artistic standards changed in the 20th century. You will now listen to a conversation. You will then be asked a question about it. After you hear the question, you will have 20 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
Now listen to a conversation between two students.
Jenny, I heard you just got the lead role in the school play this Sunday.
You heard right, Roger. The lead actress got a really sore throat and she can't use her voice. I've been asked to take her place. It's a huge honor, but I'm not sure I'll do it.
But you've wanted to star in a play all year. Don't you want the lead role?
Well, I do, but my parents are coming to visit me this weekend, you know? I really wanted to spend time with them, not just spend all my time practicing and being on stage.
Well, why not do both? You could practice your lines in front of them, and I bet they'd really be proud to watch you starring in the play.
Maybe you're right, and I could invite them to the cast party after the play, too. But my parents really wanted me to show them around town. If I act in the play, I'm not sure I'll have time.
Well, if you back out of the role, you'll have more time with your parents, for sure. But what's the theater going to do? Do they have time to find a replacement?
My friend Stacy could replace me. She's free this weekend, and she starred in the same play last year.
Well, you better ask her soon. You want to give her time enough to practice.
If I ask her. I really would love to be the leading lady.
Briefly summarize the problem the speakers are discussing. Then, state which of the two solutions from the conversation you would recommend. Explain the reasons for your recommendation. You will now listen to part of a lecture. You will then be asked a question about it. After you hear the question, you will have 20 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a sociology class.
Let's consider the way sociologists use the terms culture and society. A society is a distinct group of people. A sociologist would say that people in a society are defined by their social interactions and the culture they share. Meanwhile, culture itself can be defined as that society's shared knowledge, beliefs, and expectations. Often people think of a society as something really, big. And sure, that's true. An entire nation, for example, will generally have some common thread of culture that defines it. The most obvious example is that citizens of one region generally speak a common language. But think about behavioral standards too, like what's considered polite or impolite. Whereas in one country you might be expected to take off your shoes as the guest in another's home, in other countries that might be considered strange. Cultural traits like that can extend over enormous populations. But a society can also be much smaller, much simpler. Take this class. Aren't we a society? We have social interactions with each other every week. And I think it's fair to say we have a culture of a sort too. Think back to what happened on the second day of class. Do you all remember? I'd missed my train and didn't have any way to let you all know that I'd be late. But in contrast to other classes, where students might have just headed home 15 minutes after the planned start time, each and every one of you waited the full 30 minutes it took me to arrive. That kind of set expectations, right? It laid the foundation for a culture of patience, something I think is still true of this particular group, this little society.
Using points and examples from the lecture, explain how a society can be a large group of people or a very small group. For examples, explanations, and help grading yourself, go to toefl.magoosh.com/YouTube speaking answers. You're done! Congratulations! Alright, so that's a full TOEFL speaking section. A lot of talking at a computer screen. It's a little strange, right? And the trick to getting good scores on the TOEFL speaking section, the big trick, is to structure your answers well, to know how much time to spend introducing your ideas, giving examples of your ideas, and elaborating more, giving more information. For example, that fifth question, it's pretty tricky, right? There's a lot of information you need to include. The problem, the solutions, your opinion, all of that in 1 minute. At magoosh.com, we can explain more how exactly to structure your answers and what strategies to use on your test, on test day, to make sure that you give the best answers possible. So come to magoosh.com and we can help you out with many, many more practice questions just like this along with explanations for every single one. Happy studying!